I was leaving my marriage, packing up my children, and moving to my parents' house, which is super fun, by the way. You're on for a while. But another decision I was making at that time was, what am I going to feed my children? You see, I had made a rash kind of decision, even though I knew for a long time that I was leaving this marriage. It kind of happened overnight, really. And I had 2 weeks before I moved out, and I had to make a decision on how to feed my children. And of course, I came last in that decision. So I was rummaging through the pantry and found a jumbo size of peanut butter, not the Costco size, but that would have been helpful. And I thought, this is perfect. It will sustain me. So I did manage, of course, to eat more than just peanut butter, but the majority of the day was scooping out peanut butter and making sure my kids had the nutrition that they needed. Luckily, we moved on, and I did get some real food, but I lost a lot of weight really quickly, and I grew really tired of peanut butter. So after that, though, there was a lot of challenge. We endured, we persevered, we grew, we took 2 steps forward, a few steps back. And I learned very quickly how to make hard decisions and navigate through those. And at that time, anxiety and depression came knocking at my door, but I kept it at bay. I dealt with it. I learned a lot about spirituality. I learned a lot about my relationships with others, love, self-worth, the men in my life, self-worth, motherhood, self-worth, the list goes on. A short time later, a couple years into me leaving my marriage, my youngest son got very sick. And nobody really knew what was wrong with him. And we had lots of tests to get done, and it was just a 2-year period of trying to put all the dots together. And I became a mama wolf, because I just knew something was not right, and I would not take, certain things for an answer. So 2 years later, after that experience, we did find out he has Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And I was very worried it was a vascular situation, but thankfully it was not. But I also knew that he would have a lot of hard decisions as he grew because of that. And I knew that this was going to be a hard thing for him to navigate through, and that would be his own journey. But of course, as a mother does, I blamed myself. And I wore that. And I had to learn how to accept that genetics aren't something that I can own. That's not something that I can blame myself for. But it took a long time. And through that time period, I had to work a lot of jobs. And I was working a lot of really hard jobs at the time, taking care of other people's children and burning the candle at both ends and trying to figure out what it is that I wanted to do with my life and accommodate my children. And I wore guilt and shame like a badge of honor. It was right across my chest all the time. And I was suffering with debilitating panic attacks. And I would go to parties and get-togethers and go to the bathroom and lose my shit, to say at least, put on that face and walk back out, because I did not want to give in to weakness. It was not an option for me. So some of these jobs were soul-sucking, but I accommodated. And there were times that I almost chose to go to the food bank to put food on my table, time and time again. But I made sure to make it work, and I did. And I'm quite proud of that now. And about a year ago, my oldest son started showing signs of anxiety and depression. And I thought, if there is anyone in this world that's going to help him, it's going to be me. I've got this. I didn't. I didn't have it at all, because I didn't have my shit together. So I chose to try and get him admitted. And he advocated, long before we got him admitted, to have choice and to help himself. He wanted the help. So we slowly started the process, and there was 2 times that he just did not want to be here. And he tried not to be. So I did get him admitted, and that was a hard choice, because that's the last thing any mother wants to do, especially a single mother, because that's a big failure, really, as a parent. That's what it felt like. And so we took him in to the room with all the smooth surfaces and the rounded walls and the plexiglass and the small rectangle. I waved goodbye. I backed up down the hall, and they locked me out from my son. He was locked in. That choice was made for me. And it was the hardest choice I have ever made in my life. But I'm happy to say, today, he's doing so good. He's doing amazing. And I'm so proud of him today. But again, I started to unravel. My grandfather was also dying at this time, and he had been for quite a while. He was like a father to me. So very difficult to watch that happen. And I was already feeling the burden of so much guilt and so much shame and so much failure that I was in crisis mode 24/7. And I had been for probably a long time. So he died, and it was very difficult. And I tried to paint through that. See, there's a silver lining in all of this, is that I wanted to find a way to heal. So what I did is I painted, I created, I wrote, I was passionate. But when he died, the color went out. I didn't have any way to draw color from it anymore. It was gone. It turned gray. I went away by myself for a whole week, and I did paint, but something was missing. Something just wasn't there anymore. So, fast forward a few months, I thought I had some clarity in life. I really did. I really was seeing relationships differently. But what I didn't realize at that time, I was beginning to make the biggest choice I had ever made. I sat on a bench. It was a beautiful sunset evening, one of Nova Scotia's best. Pinks and blues and orange and the trees and the breeze. And I looked around and I felt such a calm I had never felt before. A peace that washed over me. And I knew right then I was making a choice. You see, 2 days prior, I had started writing letters to all of my friends, my family, my children, the love of my life, because I was going to commit suicide. I was done making choices. I couldn't handle it anymore. It was the hardest thing that I've ever gone through. But something in me was still roaring. There was something in there that wasn't ready to give up yet. There was something that couldn't let go just 100%. So I drove home frantically. I told my spouse, I called my mother, I made them hold this accountable for me, and I went to the hospital and I got help. It was a slow process, but I chose to live. And I chose to see color in everything I did, every movement, every conversation, every moment I could. And I began to paint again. I painted with vibrance, with passion, with authenticity. And I walked every day with the joy in my step. And it was not as easy as I can sum it up in 10 minutes, but I know for a fact that this choice to be here will make me look at every relationship and every moment I have as such blessing. And the color returned to my world. And I know for a fact it will never leave again, because I have an army behind me. And I know deep down in my heart that being here is much more important than not, no matter what the circumstances. And I feel lucky for that every day. Thank you.